Well, we have Major Tom to do part three of our trilogy. And this really is, I think, the pièce de résistance, if I can put it that way. Major Tom, carry on, please. Part three.
Yeah, Liz, not only have we talked about the embalmer surveys and the fact that in my latest survey, 83% of the embalmers responding, 250 to 301, said they're still seeing the white fibrous clots, and they're seeing them in a shocking 27% of their corpses through the end of year 2024. And now I bring some urgency to that situation because both Richard Hirschman and myself and John O'Looney, we've been in touch with a team of scientists around the world led by a gentleman named Mr. Greg Harrison, who's in Australia, in Sydney. And he's been leading a team of scientists in different universities and other places along the world, trying to look at these white fibrous clots that we've been talking about today, trying to figure out what they're made of, how they're forming, and then maybe potentially how we can stop that from happening. And the news I've got today is there's new evidence from lab tests they've conducted that the spike protein, both from the COVID virus and the COVID vaccine, are causing these white fibrous clots. We're pretty sure of that. And then also something very disturbing, Liz, that the spike protein, both again from the virus and the vaccine, are causing, contain what's called prions, prions, which are basically misfolded proteins that are infectious in nature. So these white fibrous clots and the blood surrounding them in the bodies that have them could be contagious, infectious, and infect perfectly good proteins either within their own body or people outside their body if the blood or clots are handled by other people. So this is a very alarming situation. I want to run the audience through the testing that's been done on the clots kind of leading up to this, and then we'll talk about it. The first thing that Greg Harrison and his team did is they did a test called ICP-MS, and that stands for inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry. And what it does, Liz, is it identifies the elements from the periodic table that are in the white fibrous clots. So they ran these clots through that ICP-MS analysis, and they found that they contain very low amounts of magnesium, potassium, and iron, which are in higher amounts in normal blood. So right away, they could tell, hey, this is not regular blood coagulating. And it's pretty obvious, iron gives blood its red color. These things are white in nature. So it's pretty obvious, they have low iron in them. But strangely, they conversely found very high amounts of elements not usually in high amounts in blood, like phosphorus, sulfur, and then sometimes tin. So that was a very strange result they got. So they knew this something is happening inside the vascular system that's forming these clots that's very unusual. So the next test they did was called an HPLC analysis. It stands for high performance liquid chromatography. This actually identifies the compounds that are in the sample that's being tested. And what they did is this, we all have fibrinogen and it's in our plasma. They found, by the way, that these clots contain about 56% of the clot is made up of fibrinogen. And that's a natural protein that's produced by our bodies. It's produced by the liver, and it's very important to the normal clotting process. Whenever there's damage done to the vascular system, like you get a cut, then liquid fibrinogen, which is in our blood plasma, converts to a white solid called fibrin. It kind of sets up like a net, and then it collects red blood cells and platelets and forms a clot at the site of wherever your cut is, your wound, right? And then that way you don't bleed out. And then eventually that cut or wound heals, and after it's healed, then another enzyme that we have called plasmin comes along, attaches to the fibrinogen, and makes the clot go away. Well, what's happening in here in that fibrinogen is usually that forms the fibrin is made up of 3 strands. And the 3 strands are the alpha, beta, and gamma chains of fibrinogen. You can think of them as 3 smaller ropes. They intertwine and form a stronger 3-stranded rope, a strand of fibrin. Well, and they're always in a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. Well, in these white fibrous clots, they were not in a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. The fibrinogen gamma chain, the beta chain was 36% of the clot, 16% of the clot was the gamma chain, and only 4% of the clot was the alpha chain. So that told there was something very, instead of this 1:1:1 ratio, we now have this bizarre 36:16:4 ratio, which reduces to like a 9:4:1 ratio of the various fibrinogen chains in the clot. So they knew that something is happening, altering the process by which fibrinogen converts normally into fibrin. They also, part of that, the normal process is there's another protein called thrombin, which acts as a catalyst in that process. But they found no thrombin in the clots, in these clots from the embalmers. So they said, well, something else then has to be driving the reaction, right? If it's not thrombin, something else is driving this reaction. We are pretty sure what's driving the reaction is the spike protein, either from the virus or from the vaccine. So one of the next things Greg's team did is they took a look at the clots and they applied several staining techniques to them, one called Congo red, another one called thioflavin T. And those tests are done to detect whether there's amyloid protein present. Amyloid spelled AMYLOID. It's just a fancy term for a misshaped or misfolded protein. And sure enough, both the tests were positive. For example, the thioflavin T test, after the stain was applied, they looked at the clots under a UV fluorescent scope and saw that the clots lit up green, which is a positive indication for thioflavin T. And what was really interesting is they went later on, they looked at the clots under UV light without the thioflavin T stain on them, and they still saw that they fluoresced. So that was a strong indication that these things are amyloid or misfolded proteins. But Greg's real concern was, he was wondering, could this be a certain type, a subset of an amyloid or misfolded protein that's called a prion, Prion. And these are very dangerous because these are actually misshaped or misfolded proteins that can make other perfectly good proteins around them misfold. So they're contagious, they're infectious, and they're associated with neurological diseases like Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, mad cow disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. So if the clots contain prions in them, this could be a very serious thing for humanity, right? Especially given the fact that the embalmers are finding 27% of the corpses containing these clots and 22% with the microclotting. So he had Richard Hirschman send samples of these clots to a neuroscientist in Japan named Dr. Kevin McCarran, not to be confused with Dr. Kevin McKernan. Kevin McKernan is the doctor that found the SV40 promoter sequence in the Pfizer vaccines that was not disclosed to the FDA, when the Pfizer went forward for their emergency use authorization approval. But this is a different doctor. His name's Kevin McCarran. He's a neuroscientist and been doing this for studying Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the effect of amyloid material and prions on these diseases for years. So he was sent samples, about a dozen samples of the white fibrous clots from Richard Hirschman, and he's done several tests on them. One of the tests he did first is he looked at them under a high-powered microscope. Let's try our thing here, and we'll see if we can get this to show up on the screen here. Let's see if I can find it now. I'm looking for oh, here it is. Let's see if we can do a share on this. Uh-oh. We saw something on the screen before we started. I don't see it now. Do you, Liz?
No, it's not up, unfortunately.
Yeah. How about now?
No. Yes. Got it.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, so what Dr. McCarran did is he looked at the sample of, and he calls them calamari clots, and so do the embalmers, because they look like calamari, and they they feel like a rubber band. And so what he did is he took a 5 micrometer section, a very thin slice, and put it under a high-powered scanning electron microscope at a 5,000 times power. And this is what he saw when he looked at the clot. What you're looking at there is fibrinogen, and you see that it's all bent and twisted out of shape. You can see nodules on it. Now let me show you what normal fibrinogen is supposed to look like. This is what it looked like in the embalmer's white fibrous clot. Here's what it's supposed to look like. See the photo on the left there? That's fibrinogen in human plasma normally. You see it's nice and smooth, kind of like spaghetti. And like I said, it forms a net that then collects your red blood cells, your platelets, forms that clot or normal clot until the wound is healed, and then the clot is broken down by our plasmin. But now if you look on the right, you see this is out of the paper that was in the done by RYU and colleagues, and it appeared in the magazine Nature in August of 2024. And they're showing that human plasma, when it combines with the spike protein, does something to the fibrinogen. Look what it does there. It creates those nodules on it, right? And it makes it all the fibers get all twisted. So that's what that looks a lot more, that picture on the right, like what Dr. McCarron's seeing here, right? Let me see if I can get another. I've got another picture. That was at 5,000. This is the same embalmer clot at a magnification of 1,000. Look at that, Liz. Look at how twisted the fibrinogen is, how many nodules are on it. You know, you can see why it would be almost impossible for our body's natural enzyme plasmin to break down such a type of clot. It's, you know, so it's obvious here that the spike protein from either the virus or the vaccine, you know, actually both of them, we think a lot more is happening with the vaccine, because if you remember, the virus clears pretty quickly from people's body, usually in a couple of weeks to a month or two at the most. And they get a lot less of the spike protein through the COVID virus. But the vaccine, unfortunately, the mRNA from the jabs is setting up shop all over the body, and it's producing the spike protein continuously, maybe indefinitely. They've got papers out there that show it's continuing to produce the spike protein for at least 2 years. And remember, it was only supposed to do that for 2 weeks, 2 days to a week. So people that have taken the shots are getting massive amounts of spike protein in their system, and this is the result they're getting. They're getting this bizarre alteration of the normal clotting process, spike protein combining with our fibrinogen to form these nasty, nasty clots.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
When you have a group of people in a room, and you, I think it's the Bluetooth test that you can do on people. If you've got tin in your body, no wonder it shows up positive for metal, that you can see that people have got something inside them. I mean, normally you wouldn't have tin inside your body, would you? I mean, I can't think of any way.
And tin, we don't think tin is necessary for the reaction to take place. We think tin is a catalyst, so it can speed up the reaction. It's not a necessary catalyst, so the reaction can still occur without it. Because a lot of countries, people don't have a lot of tin in their system because of regulations on drinking water pipes. But in places here like the United States, where tin is used sometimes in soldering, people can, over a lifetime, they can pick up a significant amount of tin in their blood. And that may be a factor in helping to drive the reaction to go faster, the conversion into these misfolded proteins. So what was interesting is, Dr. McCarron, the neuroscientist in Japan, looked at those clots, like I said, under the high power microscope, and didn't like what he saw right off the bat. He then did another test called Raman spectroscopy, which is another test that confirmed the presence of amyloid material, misfolded proteins. But the most important test he did, and he just did a few weeks ago, Liz, was something called RT-QuIC, and that stands for real-time quaking-induced conversion. It's a test that's considered the gold standard test for detection of prions. Basically, these are the nasty proteins that actually they're misfolded themselves, and they make other proteins around them misfold as well. So he did a test, this RT-QuIC test, and his tests were pretty clever. What he did is he has not taken the COVID vaccines, and his blood plasma is normal. He's already checked it before. He took a drop of his blood plasma, and the way you get that, by the way, is you can draw your own blood and let it stand in a tube for about 4 hours or longer, and it'll separate, right? The red blood cells will go to the bottom. You'll have a thin buffy coat layer in the middle with like your platelets and white blood cells. But then in the top is a yellowish color liquid. It's mostly water. It's called, that's your plasma. But in that plasma is your fibrinogen. That's where it's in a liquid form. You can't see it. It's still liquid form, but it'll convert to white solid fibrin, under a clotting situation. So he took a drop of his blood plasma, that clear yellowish liquid, and he put it on the edge of a slide. And he had it just touch some of the white fibrous material from the white fibrous embalmer's clots. And then he subjected it to this RT quick test. And within 7 hours, a whole amyloid cascade happened on in his plasma. And this actually scared him, because he's run this RT quick test many times before. And typically when there is a substance of a high prionic nature in it, it takes about 15 to 24 hours for it to register in this test. This test, however, it registered in just 7 hours, Liz. So and he ran it 3 times just to make sure he ran it right. And he got the same result every time. So this is really scary. It's showing that the clots and the blood surrounding them may contain these infectious prions, probably does, right? So when I found that out, I immediately, first of all, I sent off emails to all the 50 national, regional, and state funeral director associations around the world that I ran my surveys with, telling them, hey, embalmers, be careful how you handle these clots in the blood now, because we think they may contain infectious prions. You may infect yourself, And also sent an email to the vascular surgeon societies, letting them know they're vascular surgeons, cardiologists, endovascular specialists. They're working cath labs. Please tell these people, be careful how you handle these clots in the blood. But think about it, Liz. For the last 4 years, blood has been draining off the tables of embalmers down into the sewers. These cath lab doctors and their nurses, and they may have inadvertently infected themselves, touching the clots, the blood, the instruments that touch them. They may have infected the operating rooms. People in the last 4 years, Liz, that have been infected with these infectious prions may have been donating blood to the American Red Cross, the other blood donation services all around the world. So our blood supply could be tainted. This thing has wide-reaching ramifications. So I immediately, when I got the results, I sent them to Robert Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. I have not, unfortunately, though, heard back from them yet, Liz. I know they've been busy lately working on dyes in the food and fluoride in the water and other things. But, to me, this is a much bigger issue, right? Because this could affect all of humanity if these things are indeed contagious. So what I would love them to do is to get in touch immediately with the CDC, FDA, university labs all over the world, have them obtain their own samples of the embalmer's clots, right? And microclotting, the blood that's microclotted. And it's easy to get samples. Richard Hirschman will happily provide them. Like I said, 83% of the embalmers that responded to the surveyors, so they probably have local embalmers who could give them samples of the clots if they asked for them. But they need to do their own testing, repeat all these tests we've been talking about, especially this RT quick one, and see if they can either confirm or refute Dr. McCarran's results, right? Because we need to know whether these things are infectious or not. This humanity is at stake.
It is terrifying when you think about it. Absolutely terrifying, Major Tom. I can't thank you enough. And we'll get this out, obviously, to all the people. And, we deal with normal people, but we also deal with the medical profession. I mean, they need to know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because if it reacts that quickly, I mean, it's not difficult to mix blood and when you're operating or you have a cut or whatever. I mean, you're dealing with scalpels and knives and what have you when you're cutting people up and dealing with them. It wouldn't be difficult to have a nick yourself and get some of this, that way. It's terrifying.
And the unfortunate thing, Liz, is, like I said, we're 4 years into this, but this was actually predicted at least a couple of years ago. Our famous Dr. Peter McCullough co-wrote a paper with Dr. Stephanie Seneff, and in that paper, they predicted that the spike protein from the vaccine could be prionic in nature and cause these infectious diseases. And, so I'm worried that in, 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to see a massive amount of neurodegenerative diseases, more of these white fibrous clots. I hate to see young people starting to get Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, mad cow disease, dementia, in their 30s and 40s. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm concerned that it might happen based upon the results we're getting.
Well, when you look at the Agenda 2030 and how they want to depopulate the earth, I'm afraid you have to fear the worst.
Yeah, and we've already seen some examples. For example, here in the United States, in the state of Oregon, there's a county called Hood River County, and I saw an article just 3 days ago in Health News that said that they've had 3 cases of Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease in their one county alone. Now, their county only has 24,000 people in it, and this is a disease that strikes 1 in a million people, Liz. So the odds of one person in that community getting it is about 1 in 40. The odds of 3 people getting it in the same county within the same year is 1 in 64,000, Liz. So they really beat the odds by having 3 cases in just 1 year, unless something unusual is up, which is, I think, the prionic nature of the spike protein getting into the environment. So we got a situation, Liz. We got a big situation here.
Well, I don't know what to say really, except thank you for alerting us over here. I'm sure that you've already spoken to Dr. John Coleman. Is that right? Have you spoken
John
to
Campbell? Over.
No, John Campbell. I always call him Coleman.
Yeah, John Campbell. I've sent emails to all the people that are on our side of the movement. Right. And I'm trying to go on as many. And God bless you for putting me on to talk about this, because the more it gets out there, the better the chance that those in authority with the money will do something. Because the team of scientists that have been working on this, they're just a ragtag team of scientists. They're just people, and they're doing this with all their own money. Think about all these university labs and the CDC and the FDA. They have hundreds of millions of dollars. And to run this RT quick test, for example, it takes $5,000 every time you run it. So in the 3 times that Dr. McCarran ran it, he blew $15,000 of his own money and some people that have been supporting him. But this is a pittance for our governments to run.
Can I ask a question here? Where is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation supporting all this?
They're promoting more shots and more mRNA shots for your future. And if this is happening with the COVID mRNA shots, there's no reason why it won't be happening with the shots they'd have out, for the shingles, RSV virus. They want to put out one for the bird flu, for the regular flu, more COVID shots. My advice to everybody is, I'm not a doctor, but my advice to my family, loved ones, and friends is do not take any mRNA-based shot ever.
I think I stop at shots completely, whether they're mRNA or not, because who knows these days what's in a shot that says it doesn't contain mRNA. I wouldn't trust anybody with anything anymore. When you think, in my lifetime, going back, as you can sound a few years older than you, Major Tom, but the medical profession was the most revered and respected profession on earth. The medics, you went to your doctor, and I haven't seen a doctor, and I am actually touching wood at the moment. I haven't seen a doctor for 10 years. I've got no intention of going.
I don't want to go to a hospital either, Liz. They did a survey here in America last year. The trust in the medical system in doctors has gone down from, used to be 70%. Now it's less than 40%. So it's almost been cut in half. That's how little people are trusting their doctors, and deservedly so, because we've been lied to, and people know when they've been lied to.
Well, Major Tom, I can't thank you enough for putting this. We'll get all this out, and you'll be able to see it very shortly. And as I've told you earlier, we've just started our own political party to talk about all the things that nobody will talk about. And we've had wonderful people in the past, like Andrew Bridgen, who stood up in the House of Commons and brought all this out. Sadly, he's no longer an MP, but we have got 1 or 2 good people still left. When you think that we had 650 MPs and we had 1 that would actually speak, Well, we're going to have to do this ourselves. So this is what we're going to do. And your surveys and the latest information you've got will form part of our medical side. And we'll bring it all out. And this has to be done. But we have to do it from a grassroots level. You can't expect or hope that anybody that has got some clout will do anything at all. So we have to do it ourselves.
Amen, Liz. And I was watching a video by Richard Vobes the other day. He was talking about one of the things we need to talk about is about who is going to be suffering in the future from these shots if these things are infectious in nature. And he brought up the point about the late Dr. Arne Burkhardt, who's a famous pathologist. He's passed away, but he had a lecture where he showed on pathology slides spike protein from the vaccine in all parts of the body, the spleen, liver, heart, brain. But two of the places it likes to go the best are the men's testicles and women's ovaries. And he stopped at one point in his lecture and he said, if I was a young female, for example, that had not taken the vaccines and I wanted to have a family someday, I would search for a husband who has not taken the vaccine either. And Richard, in one of his YouTube videos the other day, kind of alluded to that fact that we may need to start asking difficult questions, young people, about have you taken the vaccine? Have you not? Before they decide to get married to somebody, if they want to have a family.
Can I just say, we have the daughter of a friend of ours, and the first question she asks when a young man says, would you like to come out for a drink? She said, before we go anywhere, before we do anything at all, even go for a drink, have you taken the jab?
Good for her. An intelligent question.
It's not something that ever passed my lips when I was 19 or 20, I have to tell you. But this is the first question she asks now, just even before they go out for a drink. Have you taken the jab?
Amen. I think more young ladies need to have the similar fortitude to ask that question. It's an embarrassing question, but it needs to be asked.
Well, there we go. Major Tom, thank you for this. And we'll put all these up. And it's such a pleasure to see you again. Our audience will be absolutely over the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.